It's Saturday, March 20th, 2004. A group of friends are travelling to a ski resort near Montgomery, Vermont. As they are driving along the highway, they notice an empty car backed into the side of an abandoned house. Feeling curious, they decide to pull over and check it out. The vehicle is an Oldsmobile 88 sedan. Its owner, who is nowhere to be seen, has backed the car into the house with such force that it is now lodged in the wall. A board from one of the windows has also collapsed onto the trunk. Bemused by such an odd sight, one of the skiers grabs his camera and begins taking photographs. He doesn't know it yet, but he is capturing the only known images of a crime scene that will mystify people for years to come. When a state trooper shows up, he assumes that the car has been abandoned by a drunk driver. On the passenger seat, he finds 2 checks from a bar and restaurant called the Black Lantern Inn. The checks are addressed to a 17-year-old teenager named Brianna Maitland. With the checks in hand, the officer drives to the inn to track down the owner. However, he quickly learns that the inn is closed. Although the vehicle is registered to Brianna's mother Kelly, it appears as though he makes no attempt to contact her. Instead, he gets the car towed and finishes work for the weekend. At the time of her disappearance, Brianna was staying at a friend's house in Sheldon. Before leaving for work, she left a note for her friend. The note said that she would be back later that evening. Unfortunately, the friend in question left that weekend to visit her sister. As a result, a number of days passed before anyone realized that Brianna had failed to return home from work. Her parents reported her missing on March 23rd. 2 days later, a police officer showed them a photograph of the crashed Oldsmobile at the Dutchburn House. Their hearts sank when they saw the photo, as it was obvious that something terrible had happened. The police and hundreds of volunteers scoured the fields surrounding the house. A canine unit and a helicopter from the National Guard were used in the search. Rivers, ponds, and nearby roads were also checked, but nothing was ever found. Brianna's ATM card, migraine medication, and a case for her contact lenses were still inside the car. The skiers who came across her vehicle said that they had seen a broken necklace, some loose change, a disposable coffee cup, and a water bottle on the ground. The presence of the ATM card and medication indicated that Brianna had not left on her own accord. The state of the vehicle and the broken necklace suggested that some kind of struggle may have taken place. Brianna's car keys have never been found. Despite all of this, it appears as though the police initially believed that they were dealing with a runaway. Brianna was an independent 17-year-old who had recently left her family's farm in East Franklin so that she could live closer to her friends. There were no problems at home. She simply wanted to spread her wings and become her own person. Her friends attended high schools that were 15 miles south of her family's farm. Feeling isolated, she began pushing to live closer to them. Although her parents were uneasy about the prospect of her moving out, they knew that they couldn't keep her caged up in rural Vermont. Sooner or later, she was going to become an adult. If they didn't grant her some freedom now, she would only grow to resent them. Initially, Brianna moved in with a friend near Enosburg. However, that arrangement eventually fell through, and she began couch surfing at various friends' homes. During this period, she was still in close contact with her parents. Brianna dropped out of high school roughly 1 month before her disappearance. By March of 2004, she was working 2 part-time jobs. One was a waitress position at KJ's Diner in St. Albans. The other was a dishwashing job at the Black Lantern Inn in Montgomery. These two locations are 30 miles apart. The dishwashing job was relatively new, as Brianna had only started working there 2 weeks before her disappearance. On the night that she went missing, she had just finished her third shift. Brianna did not own a phone. Her co-workers at the inn said that her last shift was uneventful. Nobody paid her a visit, and she did not make or receive any calls. The staff finished work at 11:20 p.m. Although they asked Brianna to stick around and eat with them, she declined. By that point, she was eager to get home to her friend's house in Sheldon, as she had work at KJ's Diner in St. Albans early the next morning. After declining the invitation to stay, she walked outside and got into her car. She then pulled out of the parking lot and headed west. This was the last confirmed sighting of Brianna Maitland. In the aftermath of Brianna's disappearance, there were rumours that she had overdosed at a party or fallen victim to local drug dealers. Tipsters mentioned various names. There were also dubious claims that she had been fed to pigs, thrown into a lake, tied to a tree, and dismembered with a table saw. When these tips were traced back to the source, the result was always the same. The information was never first-hand. Instead, people were merely repeating what they had heard elsewhere. If you've ever lived in a small town, then this won't surprise you. People in small communities have close social connections. While this is mostly a positive thing, it does allow gossip to spread like wildfire. One week after Brianna vanished, a tipster claimed that 2 drug dealers were holding her against her will at a rented house. When the police raided the property, they found no trace of the missing teenager. Brianna Maitland's case often reminds me of the murder of Brittany Drexel. Brittany was a 17-year-old who went missing in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina in 2009. Following her disappearance, there were allegations that a group of drug dealers held her captive at a stash house before killing her and feeding her to alligators. Of course, the truth was far more predictable. In 2022, it came to light that a sex offender named Raymond Moody had picked Brittany up, murdered her, and then buried her remains in a wooded area. Brianna did know drug dealers. She also reportedly experimented with drugs at parties. However, that isn't really surprising, as drug abuse was rampant in rural Vermont, especially among teenagers and young adults. There wasn't much else to do except drink in fields and attend house parties. It was also very easy to become acquainted with shady characters. In small towns, everyone is a friend of a friend. Many of the theories surrounding Brianna's case don't make sense when you consider the time and distance involved. Brianna left her workplace at roughly 11:20 p.m. The distance between the inn and the house is 1.5 miles, so it would have taken her only 2 or 3 minutes to reach the house. The first reliable sighting of her vehicle took place at midnight, which was roughly 40 minutes after she left work. This means that there wasn't time for her to overdose at a party or anything of that nature. The timeline also makes it less likely that she was attacked elsewhere or that someone staged her car to make it look like an accident. All in all, it appears as though whatever happened very quickly and within the immediate vicinity. A number of people recalled seeing Brianna's car at the house. One person said that the headlights were on. Another reported that the blinker was flashing. None of these witnesses saw anyone at the scene. One person who was at the house that night was Brianna's ex-boyfriend, James Robatialle. James and Brianna had a casual short-term relationship. Their brief romance led to an altercation between Brianna and James's girlfriend, Keely Lacrosse. Keely and Brianna used to be high school friends. However, that changed when Keely learned that James had cheated on her with Brianna. This eventually culminated in Keely punching Brianna outside a party. James Robatialle is often put forward as a suspect in the case. This is understandable as he gave conflicting details to the police. James claimed that he was driving home from a bar in Canada when he saw Brianna's Oldsmobile at the Dutchburn House. It was 4:30 a.m. The headlights were on and both doors were open. When he stopped and walked over, he saw that nobody was around. Before leaving, he switched off the lights and closed the doors. He said that he didn't report the incident because he had been driving under the influence. Later, he changed his story and said that he wasn't at a bar in Canada. In reality, he had spent the night drinking at a friend's house in the area. Furthermore, he claimed that he saw the vehicle at 2:30 a.m., not 4:30. His conflicting story and his relationship with Brianna do make him seem like an obvious suspect. However, many people, including the family's private investigator, Greg Overacker, don't seem to think so. The police went at James pretty hard. Presumably, they also checked his alibi and phone records. Those who knew him believe that he wasn't capable of such a crime. To them, he was a goofball who sometimes got involved in petty crime. Although James gave conflicting details at the start, he may have had a good personal reason for doing so. The time discrepancy could have been due to him being intoxicated. It might seem suspicious that he just so happened to see Brianna's car on the side of the road. However, he did live in the area. In fact, his family owned thousands of acres of land around Montgomery. It is difficult to tell whether James Robatialle is a suspect in Brianna's case. When it comes to ongoing investigations, the police like to keep their cards very close to their chest. Therefore, it is highly likely that they have information that isn't known to the public. As for Keely Lacrosse, it appears as though she fully cooperated with the authorities. In 2008, the police arrested her on serious drug charges after she was caught moving crack cocaine for a dealer named Aaron Pendergrass. During questioning, detectives said that they would clear her on all charges if she told them what happened to Brianna. However, she was unable to tell them anything. One theory is that Brianna fell victim to a sexual predator. Past cases have shown us that these men can strike if they notice an opportunity. When Brianna left that night, she may have caught the eye of someone in the vicinity. He may have been sitting in the parking lot, or in a vehicle across the street. He may have even been at the restaurant that evening. In either case, he would have needed to notice her before she left Montgomery. There was no evidence that someone had forced Brianna off the road. If such an offender did follow her, then he likely caught her attention by sounding his horn or flashing his lights. Given that Brianna didn't have a phone and she had just left her workplace, she might have assumed that a co-worker was trying to tell her something important. She may have wondered if she had forgot something or if her next shift had changed. Although Brianna was independent, there was a naivety about her that did concern her parents. For example, in the past, she had picked up a hitchhiker and brought them home. If the abduction did unfold this way, then it means that Brianna pulled into the clearance beside the Dutchburn House. The offender then stopped in such a way that it blocked her immediate exit. At that point, he either walked towards her car or he sprinted, giving her little time to react. Brianna's car struck the house at an angle. In the photographs, you can see that the wheels are pointing to the left. This suggests that she attempted to back up to her left so that she could pull off to the right. In other words, something was preventing her from driving straight ahead. However, she either panicked and hit the gas too hard, or she simply misjudged how much space she had. On the morning of her disappearance, Brianna and her mother, Kelly, went shopping for clothes. While they were shopping, Brianna excused herself and went outside. When she returned, she seemed somewhat nervous. This detail has fueled online speculation that she met someone who threatened her. However, Brianna's father, Bruce, feels that the story has been blown out of proportion. He believes that Brianna went outside for a cigarette as she didn't want her mother to know that she was a smoker. Another theory is that Brianna scheduled a meeting with someone at the Dutchburn House. Although it can't be ruled out, there are a few issues with this theory. Firstly, Brianna didn't have a phone to schedule such a meeting. She also didn't make or receive any calls at her workplace. Secondly, she spent the morning with her mother. When they were finished shopping, her mother dropped her off at her friend's house in Sheldon. This left little time or space for Brianna to schedule such a meeting. Last but not least, no witnesses saw any vehicle at the house. One avenue of investigation focused on a serial killer named Israel Keyes. Keyes was known to have spent time in Vermont in the past. Keyes was quickly ruled out, however, as financial records showed that he was elsewhere when Brianna went missing. The old Dutchburn barn no longer exists. In 2016, it burned to the ground after a group of teenagers set it on fire. These days, all that remains is an empty, overgrown lot. Following Brianna's disappearance, the police recovered an item from the ground where her car had crashed. Although they recovered a DNA profile from the item, it wasn't a direct match with any persons of interest. In 2020, they began using genetic genealogy to track down the source of the DNA. 2 years later, it was announced that they had found a match. Unfortunately, it appears as though the DNA belonged to someone who wasn't a viable suspect in the case. This outcome wasn't completely unexpected, as there was always the possibility that a passing motorist had discarded the item. On the morning of July 3rd, 2019, a motorist in a Ford Edge attempted to pass a vehicle on the crest of a hill in Newport Centre. The motorist in the Ford clearly misjudged the situation as he collided head-on with an oncoming Chevrolet Malibu. Sadly, the occupants of both cars were killed in the crash. The driver of the Malibu was named as 67-year-old Rex Starr. The motorist in the Ford Edge turned out to be Brianna's ex-boyfriend, James Robatialle. The father of two was 33 years old. Two decades have now passed since Brianna Maitland went missing. From the outside, it appears as though there hasn't been any movement in the case. However, we have no idea what is going on behind the scenes. Cold cases are often like that. The years pass by and nothing happens. The online rumor mill churns out the names of various suspects, and everyone becomes entrenched in their own theories. Then, on some random weekday morning, a news headline makes you rub your eyes and do a double take. An arrest has been made, or a suspect has been officially named. Suddenly, the truth comes pouring out, rendering most theories obsolete. People who follow the case are shocked by the evidence, some of which has been withheld since the very beginning. One day in the not-so-distant future, we may wake up to the unexpected news that Brianna's case is no longer a mystery. If the offender isn't dead or in prison, then it is likely that he has been paying close attention to the case. Despite the passage of time, he probably doesn't feel secure. In fact, he likely envisions the face of the investigator who will one day knock at his door. Sometimes he might forget. However, it is always there, lurking at the back of his mind. He looks at the appeals, Googles for updates, and even reads online discussions about the case. This man doesn't just consume this content, he actively seeks it out. Given what we know about such offenders, he might even watch this video.